we're kicking off a new series today. That new series is called Terms and Conditions. Anyone ever just randomly clicked the I accept terms and conditions from Apple or Spotify or some other just like 90-page dissertation of agreements that you're making, and you just say, I don't care, click, I agree. I have done that so many times. I might have, sold my 9th-born child to some, I don't know, I just clicked yes. Okay, go for it. Yeah, you can take whatever you want. You want my Roth IRA? Take it. Go for it. I don't care. Just give me the app, right? Sometimes we get so eager to get what we want that we forget what we're actually dealing with, the terms and the conditions. And so sometimes I have conversations where the terms of the gospel or the language that we use can sometimes be more backfilled than educated, more hearsay than informed, right? And so sometimes we have these words that we know a lot about, but we don't have a proper biblical definition of. So this series, the next few weeks, is going to be all about what does this word actually mean? How does it impact me? And how does it play with humanity in heaven? What is going on here? That's what we're looking at. And so this week's word is grace. Grace. Grace is the language of God. Grace is the language of the gospel. Grace is a word that is so prevalent and so common and so sadly misunderstood or misapplied in the church. Sometimes we have a good concept, a good idea, a good loose understanding. But what does the Bible actually define grace as, right? I think I know what grace means. I've been around the church for a long time. My parents are pastors. I had about a decade plus, a little baker's dozen of years where I wasn't following Jesus. But other than that, my whole life has been in and around the church. And so I have heard the word grace. I've seen it. I've listened to sermons about it. I've preached entire series about grace. I've experienced grace. I've told people, just give some grace. Just have a little grace, right? I even have a fun word for people who need extra grace. They're called EGRs. So if you ever hear me yell EGR, just know it might be about you. It stands for extra grace required. There are some people in your life, in my life, I might even be your EGR. I get it. I understand it. Some people are like, dude, you are too much. I'm like, yeah, try living with me. I am always go time. And so EGRs are extra grace required, and it might be you. Just kidding, though. People who are EGRs usually don't know it's them. They usually just think, yeah, it's someone else, huh? That's why I'm like, I got to be the EGR because I don't think it's me. But what does the Bible actually define grace as? Right? I love Bob Goff. Bob Goff is probably one of my favorite authors. He is hilarious. He is just full of joy, and he is just always a good time. And he has this quote from his book, Undistracted. We're following a God we can't see, for a lifetime we can't measure, to a heaven we can't comprehend, because of grace we didn't earn. That's the summation of our belief system. That's the foundation of our world view, right? But we can use a word so often that it loses its meaning. Just sidebar for a second. In 2026, we say, I love fill in the blank. I love ice cream. We got that ice cream social coming up. We got that ice cream party. I love sprinkles on my ice cream. Do I really love sprinkles on my ice cream? Or do I just really prefer sprinkles to be on ice cream? Right? And so am I elevating sprinkles to the same place as my wife and kids? Or am I devaluing that word? Right? So sometimes we can use this word so flippantly that it actually loses its meaning. Like the magnitude of grace can become watered down in our lives if we're not careful. Or if you're like me, sometimes you just nod along with just enough knowledge to get you in trouble. Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about. What in the world is going on? I know half the things. You know that's jack of all trades? Yeah, that's me. I'm a master of none, right? But for the next 5 weeks, we're going to be looking at that. And so right now, let's break down grace. Let's break it down. Let's just get into the weeds and understand this word that literally impacts your life, that impacts your eternity. This isn't just some word that we slap a bumper sticker on. This is pivotal in the faith of Jesus. So let's start with where we typically misunderstand. I'm going to use the word we because I don't want to feel like the only knucklehead in the room. So we misunderstand grace sometimes by grace is just getting something you don't deserve. While that is not wrong, it's not the full picture. Or grace is just God being nice to me. Hey, that's not bad. It's not out of line. It's not off, but it's incomplete. I think sometimes for me, maybe you do this too, we blur terms. Like we use grace and mercy as synonyms. We blur terms together. But mercy is actually to have compassion on, and it's used in the Old Testament as a seat of authority or judgment. And kindness and compassion towards the afflicted with the desire to relieve them in the New Testament, in the Greek. That's close, but that's not grace. That's mercy, right? Favor is actually a better synonym from the original language to grace than mercy is. Favor is the synonym to give freely out of delight. To give freely out of delight. That's a picture of grace. We sometimes confuse grace for love. And like I said, we have one word for love. The Greek had 4. They could define which type of love they were talking about, so they didn't dilute love like agape, which is that unconditional divine love, or confuse eros, which is romantic, passionate love, with philia, which is a deep friendship. There's a distinction there between like friends or spouse, right? And then storge, which is that family love. My children, I have a different love for my children than I do for other people in the world. But we use that one word and we kind of lump it in with grace. And we also look at grace to be really connected and intertwined with forgiveness, which is releasing a contract or debt. It's remedying a judicial penalty and satisfying or covering a legal liability. See, forgiveness is the legal side of grace, but it's not the full picture of grace because it goes beyond an emotional feeling or an interpersonal attitude. It's to pardon or let go of. So grace, maybe we think of it as God forgiving me when I messed up. It's just okay, you're forgiven. Here's a second chance. That's somewhat grace. But the much bigger picture is in the Hebrew. The Old Testament uses words to define grace as unfailing, loyal, loving, compassionate, and mercy. See, it's this and mercy and favor, right? It's also, there's a charm to it. There's this windfulness that is out of delight. I think sometimes we look at God giving us this grace as a picture of a parent begrudgingly letting the kids do what they want to do. Oh, fine, I don't care. But no. It is so much more personal than that. It is so much more rich than that. It's so much sweeter than that. I would love to give that to you. It would make me happy to extend grace to you. It's out of delight. It's because you are favored. It's also the moral quality of kindness, displaying a favorable disposition to be pleased with and to want to bless. And then when we get to the Greek, it's the state of kindness and favor toward someone, often with a focus or benefit or credit towards favor, blessing, and a free gift. See, when the original language was writing the scripture, it had this picture of, I want to give this to you because I delight in who you are. That sounds a lot richer than like someone cut me off and I'm not going to flip them the bird, right? At least that's sometimes my shallow definition of grace, is I got cut off and I want to flip the bird, but I'm not going to do that because I'm a good Christian boy. I put that back in its holster, right? No, it's so much better than that. It's almost flip it like, hey, I'm going to slow down and let you in. Come on. I know you don't understand how a zipper merge works. It's simple, one after the other, but you're not on board, so let's go. Come on in. You're inviting them in to the lane, not just not penalizing them. Right? So to paraphrase this through a biblical lens, grace is God freely giving himself and his goodness to people who cannot earn it. So grace is God's. Grace is God's. It starts with who God is. And grace is free. It can't be earned. Good, bad, or indifferent. It's not issued on what you do, but who you are. And more importantly, whose you are. This is God extending his favor to his kids. See, and then grace is given. It's a gift, not a wage. You earn a wage. You receive a gift. You don't earn grace. That wouldn't be grace. And that would be contingent upon you, when grace is contingent upon God and his divine favor. So, where do we see this in Scripture? Where do we see God giving people grace when they can't earn it? Jesus paints a beautiful picture in the parable of the prodigal son. I like to say the parable of the loving father because I think this highlights the prodigal son too much when it really should highlight the love of the father. So the parable of the prodigal, right? Luke 15, verses 16 through 19, if you have your Bibles. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, "At home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant.'" Little backstory here. The younger brother asked for his inheritance before his father had passed. In the Hebrew context, that was essentially saying, "You're dead to me. I would rather have your money given to me than a relationship with you." And so he took his inheritance and he squandered it. Think about it this way. If you had a child and they asked for their inheritance, cut you out of their life, and then went to Vegas. That's kind of the same picture of what we see here. And then a famine hits the land. He runs out of money. And now a Hebrew boy is feeding pigs. Talk about a low point. Talk about a hard pill to swallow. But then I love this line. And, I got a feeling that mothers need to hear this right now. He came to his senses. Praying moms, don't worry. Your children are going to come to their senses. I'm a testimony to that. When I had that decade of running, my mom was a praying mom. My mom still is a praying mom. And let me tell you what, it's the faithful prayers that brought me to my senses. So don't stop. Don't stop. Anyways, in this moment, it's a moment where we have exhausted all of our own efforts. I've been there. Anyone else ever been there? Like, you exhausted all your efforts. You're like, I have knocked on every door. I've turned every rock. I've tried every cabinet, and I can't find what I need. I call it this asymptomatic sinners, right? It's people who have, on the surface, no problems. They have everything. They got the white picket fence Petersons, right? They got everything, but they don't have a fulfilled life. They don't understand the love of Jesus. Their life doesn't show any symptoms of sin, but they're still at the end of themselves. Or maybe you've searched the end of a pill bottle. Maybe you've gone to the bottom of the booze and you can't find hope. You can't escape it enough to get away from that feeling when you come to your senses. That you're empty, you're hollow. Nothing you do in your own efforts is yielding the fruit you desire. I mean, the Apostle Paul knows that space too. The Apostle Paul writes that his grace is sufficient for me. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. You know what this tells me? That when I mess up, it's just a nice stage for God to show off. Now, that doesn't remediate me from following Jesus and doesn't give me a license to sin, but it does give me a safety net for when I do. Right? I don't have to worry about being perfect. I have to worry about the one who is perfect. Because His grace is sufficient. It's His delighting favor upon you. It's His free gift of love and adoration and forgiveness that is sufficient for you. That's what the human soul is craving for. That is the space that the enemy loves to play, is to say, this will fill that hole in you. And it won't. It never will. Only God can fill the God-sized hole in your heart. A spouse won't. A friend won't. Kids won't. The next political party won't. But the grace of God is sufficient. So we see in the story of the prodigal that grace is undeserved favor. Picking up at verse 20. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son." What if the story stopped there? What if it just stopped with an embrace and an admission of guilt? Would that be grace? Not quite. Not quite. See, we get to the grace when the Father freely gives. Because grace gives more than mercy. You can never earn being a son. I'm just going to sidebar for a second. If I get to be the bride of Christ, ladies in the room, you get to be the firstborn son in this story. All right? We're not going to play. I get to be the bride of Christ, so you get to be the firstborn son. Right? So you can never earn being a son. I did absolutely nothing to be born to Mark and Joni Wilson. Zero. In fact, I probably made it harder. Just going to say. I did nothing to earn it, but I still received it. I was still placed there. I was still given that. And now, I know that some of us might have had a different upbringing, a different parent structure, or a father who was absent, or a mother who was disconnected. I'm sorry. I am. But it doesn't make you any less their child. Now, did you deserve that treatment? Not at all. But you also didn't do anything to enter this earth. And so that's something that can never leave you. That's something that you can never stop being a child of God. You can reject God, but you can't stop being a child. See, that free gift comes in the package of Jesus. That the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. It's John 1:14. So grace doesn't just give us what we can't earn, but elevates us to a wild, unattainable place. Grace will elevate your life to a place that you could never even dream of going. Because what happens is Christ takes our place and in exchange gives us his. See, the son comes home hoping for mercy, right? That intertwined word of grace and mercy. Grace is about the giver of grace. Mercy is about the person. I'm not going to give you what you do deserve. See, the son had this worldview of, I hope my father doesn't give me what I deserve because I've sinned against heaven and you. But the father doesn't meet him with mercy. The father meets him with grace. But his father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and now returned to life. He was lost and now he is found." So the party began, but the father gives him a robe. You know what that symbolizes? Covering. The robe symbolized covering. That the father was saying, "You are reinstated. I am your covering." The father gave him a ring, which was an authoritative seal. The father was saying, "You are still my son, and you still carry the same weight of my name. Here's my authority." Sandals were an elevated status in the era, in the day and age, to not walk on the dirt. He was elevating him back into the family. Son came hoping to be a servant, and he was placed as a son. And then a feast, which is value, honor, prestige, the keys to the castle. The father wasn't like, "I'll let you back in on a trial basis." He said, no, I'm going to put you back into everything you walked away from. I'm going to give you everything you can't earn because you never stopped being my son. That's grace. Grace isn't avoiding a punishment, it's receiving a blessing. And grace restores relationships. If you got hard relationships with a sibling, a parent, a spouse, a child, the key to smoothing that relationship out is grace. And an unfun fact, a key to grace is humility. I didn't say that. No. It's humility. If you can humble yourself to extend to someone grace, that relationship will begin to restore. It will. Because forgiveness might remove the debt, but grace restores the relationship. Forgiveness is just, hey, we're good. Don't worry about it. But grace is that next step. Grace is that one step further of saying, hey, we're not just good. Let's get back to where we were. Because grace ultimately gives us Christ's place. See, the prodigal gives us that picture of grace, and Jesus is the fulfillment of that grace. It is always only Jesus. So this is the good news. That I have sinned. I have fallen short of the glory of God. I have missed the mark of humanity. I have not reached the bar of God. And I deserve death for it. I deserve death for my sin. Yet Jesus, in his grace, took my penalty and paid my debt so that I may be restored to right relationship with God. It doesn't get any better than that. That is the grace of God upon our lives when we have placed our faith in him. It's this wild exchange that he takes our sin and we receive his righteousness. That he takes our condemnation and we receive his acceptance. He takes our death and we receive his life. He takes our separation and we receive sonship. There's no other word than grace. So where are you trying to earn what God has already given you? Where are you trying to earn what you can only receive? Where is your view of God in a place that elevates your efforts? Or can we place our view, fix our gaze on Christ and what he's done for us and what he did for you, so that you can step into the blessing of God's delight. I just got done watching a documentary for like the 5th time. It's my favorite documentary in the world. I love documentaries. It's on the 90s Bulls. And I just love the Michael Jordan story. I love Rodman. I love Pippen. I love Kerr. I love it. And when Michael Jordan was playing baseball, when he took that weird detour in life, we'll call that the dark era, when he was in the dark era, he took that detour to baseball. And during that time when he was in the minor leagues, the major leagues had a strike. And they were calling up replacement players. And Michael Jordan was one of the ones that was invited to come play. And he said no. Now, one of his dreams was to play professional baseball, was to be in the major leagues. He would have been on the Chicago White Sox, and he declined the offer. Why? Because he didn't earn it. If you take that framework into your theology, it's garbage. None of us, not a single one, could play in the majors. But we're all invited through the blood of Jesus. Now take that mentality to your workplace. I bet you're going to get a promotion. Take that mentality to your environment where you want to see flourish. Don't take it to your theology. Don't take that to your theology. Because you can't earn grace. If you could earn it, you have no need for Jesus. And if you have no need for Jesus, then why did he die on the cross? If you can get there. Now, thankfully, that's this part that led Michael back to basketball, and we got to see amazing again. But let's not take it to our theology. Let's keep it in the Bulls documentary, right? But where are you trying to earn God's approval? I want to really sit in that question this week. Question your efforts. Question your motives as you're going through your day. Am I doing this so that God loves me? Or am I doing this from acceptance, not for acceptance? Am I doing this from forgiveness, not for forgiveness? Am I doing it from love, not for love? Don't work to become God's child. You work because you are God's child. What would people shaped by grace look like? What would this next season of your life look like if you were shaped by grace? Not shaped by begrudging forgiveness, not shaped by mercy, not shaped by putting your finger back in your pants and not flipping the bird. What if it looked like an actual delight to bless someone? Would your home be a happier place to be? Would your marriage be a better place to talk? Would your kids want to be around you? Would your friendships flourish? Would your boss have a better thing to say at your year-end review? Just because you're living from grace. You're living from grace. It's an overflow. It's an outlet. If I get the band back up. Grace isn't something God gives us. Just something God gives us. Grace becomes the way we live. One of the drums I will beat here is that it is not for you, it is through you. Grace isn't just for you, grace needs to get through you. It's not just something we receive, it's something that we also give. And a growth culture is a grace culture. You want to see your relationships grow. You want to see your kids grow. You want to see your finances grow. You want to see the evidence of your life growing in Jesus. You have to have grace involved. The growth culture is the grace culture. Because grace does something about sin. Grace does something through the cross. Grace does something in salvation. Grace does something in transformation. Grace does something. Grace does. It does. Can't stop, won't stop. It does. Because grace is the language of God. And when we learn to speak it, we begin to look like our Father. If you bow your heads with me.